Welcome back to the Unboxed broadcast. Today, Dr. Davis and I continue part two of our discussion on managing leadership burnout. We're ready to dive in, excited you're here. So stick around as we help you unbox the power and potential of your leadership.
I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and leadership coach. This is my co-host, R.P. Soriano. Soriano attended Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, worked in the financial industry, and was an international consultant before partnering with me to launch UnBoxed to Lead. Me? Well, I worked for over 20 years as a senior pastor and a community organizer. Then I retired and started a leaders peer support community called UnBoxed to Lead. Soriano and I have been friends since the early 90s, and with our varied experiences and expertise, we help leaders reach the next level in their leadership. So join us for the next few moments as we unbox the power and the potential of your relationships, your leadership, and your life. Pulling up the least mature. And so that's when we talk about having a healthy workplace culture where it's open and honest and people can share, where ideas are encouraged and thoughts and pushback and there's space for thinking and people can work through their various emotional and emotions and feelings and can talk about relationship challenges and difficulties in a constructive way. That's a healthy workplace culture. It's not just a place where everybody's happy and running around clapping and sitting on, Euro designed chairs and stuff and able to come to work with flip-flops on. It's also about how mature the team is because the leader has exhibited so much maturity within how they manage and interact in relationships.
That statement that you just made me feel, I almost felt like I started to levitate out of my seat. And it was when you can pull up the most immature person of the group. And I'm not saying this to be judgmental, because I've probably many times been the most immature person in the group. But the idea that the leader, and I've been around leaders that way, and I think that in my leadership, at times I've been able to do that. Probably just out of just sheer taking a shot at the dark. But getting the most immature person to lift up, as opposed to the most immature person pulling everybody down, is a world of difference. And it's a skill, it's an ability. And just hearing you kind of frame it that way, I think for some people out there listening to this, I think that's something to latch onto. I think that's the crux of everything, and building the skill around it, because you really identify and hit the target dead center when you're saying, what is happening in this relationship dynamic? Who is the most immature person here, and how are we responding to that? I think that's just very, very important. I didn't want to let that go didn't want to let that just go without highlighting that.
Oh, thank you.
You're watching Unboxed. I'm R.P. Soriano here with Dr. Robert Davis, and we're discussing managing leadership burnout. And Robert, your premise is that burnout does not happen because of the work, or because of a lack of passion of the work, or or being unskilled at work, but it really stems from our inability to manage relationships and a lack of a leader having. I think you've touched on this. You haven't said it exactly, but I think it's this lack of a leader having a solid self as a leader.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that, and then talk about some characteristics of what it looks like to have a solid self, why that's important?
Yeah. Just to clarify that, in my experience, burnout comes from leaders that allow others to control the relationship dynamics, or to control their life course, or to control how they function, or to control their emotions. So then burnout comes from putting my destiny in the hands of someone else, especially relationship and emotional destiny in the hands of someone else. And so, and when we do that, that's, you hit that term about a solid self. And so, when we do that, it means then that we are not being authentic. We are being more or less a reflection of others. A solid self, a solid identity, if you will, is where I am who I am because that's who I am. It's not that I am who I am because of the relationship that I'm in or the workplace that I'm in, but I am who I am because that is who I am. I can separate myself. Catch this now. I can separate myself, but let me back it up. I can remain connected to others while at the same time separating who I am and how I function from others. So I can remain connected, but I know who I am. I know what I stand for, what I believe, what I will do, what I will not do, because I know who I am. So Dr. Edwin Friedman, to get right into it, Dr. Edwin Friedman identifies a few characteristics that I think can help a person identify if they're poorly differentiated, if they do not have a solid self, if they allow others to have too much control over them. And so here are those characteristics. A person who rarely takes a stand. And what I mean by that is someone who puts their finger to the wind. A second way that you can kind of get an idea about whether or not you are an authentic leader or if you allow others to have control over you, don't have a solid self, others determine who you are, is if you are a peacemonger. Man, peace at all cost. The number one objective is to have peace. Number 3 is someone without relationship vision. And as I've said this a million times before, there is a difference between organizational vision and relationship vision. Most leaders have a strong vision about how they want the organization to run and what they want the organization to accomplish, what they want the organization to look like and achieve. But where a lot of leaders fall is that they don't have a vision about how they want relationships that they are a part of, especially within the workplace, to look and how to function. And so when you see someone without relationship vision, number 4, someone who is more a reactor than an initiator. They're very reactive, and what others do really does determine how they're going to play. They're always playing the black side of the chessboard, or they typically, I don't say always, but they typically play the black side of the chessboard, which those of you who know chess, the white side always moves first, so the black side is reacting to what the white side is doing. And then the last one is someone who is unable to remain in contact with people who disagree with them or who attempt to sabotage their efforts. So I put that out there. I want to state it now in a positive way, so that you can see what type of leader you should be. So that was kind of like the characteristics of how you can tell if you're not a solid self, if you allow others. Now, let me put it in a way, say the exact same things, but now I'm going to put it in a positive way, which is this is how a person who is mature, who is authentic, who is who they are based off of the principles and the direction that they have charted for their own life. And this is it. They take leadership stands based on well thought out principles. Number 2, they work at being comfortable with conflict and disagreements. We're not going to always be at peace. That's okay. We can have conflict and we can have disagreements, and I'm comfortable with that. I can embrace that. They have a clear relationship vision. This is what I expect. One of the things that also leads to burnout, you talk about workload. I'm sorry, let me back up here. I know I'm giving a lot, but when we talk about workload and how leaders will say, man, I'm so overworked. That is because a lot of leaders don't have a clear relationship vision, which enables them to be able to say no and to not take on too much. When you don't have a clear relationship vision, you end up taking on too much. So authentic leaders, emotionally mature leaders have a clear relationship vision. They work at being calm and a less anxious presence. And they remain connected to even the difficult people on their teams. That's kind of like how you can identify someone who is mature. Those are the characteristics that they have. Well, that's all that I had to share, Rafi. I'm waiting for you to throw the next question.
I thought that we might kind of discuss maybe where we have challenges uh, or what we struggle with in our leadership out of this list? Do you think that's a good exercise to do, to kind of deprecate ourselves a little bit? Do you want to go
And
first? I mean,
so,
I can go on and on about where I think your problems are, but
mm,
maybe you should take
so
a step.
So Richard Pryor was in this movie called Brewster's Million, and he ran for mayor because they had to blow through $1 million. And his slogan was "None of the above."
None of
Well,
the
my
above.
slogan is "All of the above." And you say, which one do I struggle with? All of the above.
Yeah.
But if I had to hone it in, I think the largest one is being comfortable with conflict and disagreements. I have a tendency to internalize conflict and to internalize disagreements and to try to find ways to either separate myself from it, cut off, or either to resolve it for the other person. I don't like people being mad at me. I don't like people not liking me. It gets to me. And that's a clear indicator of where I have some issues with being a solid self, an emotionally mature leader, is
Mm,
that need for there to be peace and harmony. And that is directly tied to what I learned from my family of origin, that family research, understanding how the emotional computer was pre programmed. I can see those connections and those parallels. And so, of course, now I am really working on and being intentional about trying to become more comfortable, just pushing it up a little bit, more comfortable with conflict and disagreement. But that's an area. Now you are an exceptional leader. I'd be interested in hearing where you find yourself struggling.
you said I am an exceptional leader.
You are an exceptional
I'm
leader.
flattered. I'm flattered that you think so. I feel like that's a lot like Larry telling Curly that he's an exceptional plumber. Uh, it's a Three Stooges reference that I don't know if many people will get. At any rate, yeah, I mean, I feel that like you, all of the above. There are issues that I struggle with here. I think my challenge with being comfortable with conflict and disagreements, I struggle with that as well, but I struggle on a kind of different end. And I don't know that this is ex- completely relevant to what you're saying here, but I think I'm a little too comfortable with conflict and disagreements.
Mm,
There was a line in the movie The Clash of the Titans, a sequel to the Clash of the Titans movie, where I think Hades says to Ares, "You fight even when you don't need to, even when you've won, you continue to fight." And I think that my tendency is that I would rather people get it all out, get in the ring, say what they've got to say until we've sorted it out. And I think that, there's a skill to doing that. It may be necessary, but if everybody getting in the ring is unskilled, you have a big mess. And I tend to, want to get in and say, let's deal with this. Let's get it all on the table. Let's tell everybody how they're feeling. I always come away feeling like very cathartic. Oh man, that went well. Boy, Robert really told Tom how he felt, man. And Tom should really know now how Robert feels. I feel good about it, and yet, Tom now is thinking about ways that he's going to lop Robert's head off, and instead of it
or in a
being
bathroom stall, bald in the fetal position.
exactly, exactly. So I always walk away feeling, and I've had that happen in family confrontations where I've been like, let's get to this. Let's deal with it. This is how I'm feeling. Tell me how you're feeling. If you're not going to tell me how you're feeling, I'm going to pry it out of you. I'm going to get it out of you. You're going to tell me. And if you're not going to tell me, I'm just going to keep going and going and going. And when it's all said and done, I always say, well, I feel good about it. And then I don't hear from the person for 6 years. And I think, wow, it didn't go as well as I thought it did. And I think that parlays into this whole idea of having a clear relationship vision. And I wanted to ask you a quick question about that. Uh, you talked about that having that clear relationship vision. I wonder if an example of not having a clear relationship vision is when it causes you to take sides as well. You have someone that reports into you, and they're working with someone else on another team, and they come to you, and this person is this person is that, and blah 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 blah, and they're giving me a hard time, and I can't seem to do this, and they're doing this, and you just tend to just take sides with that person without getting the other side of it because you just don't have a clear relationship vision. and it becomes this siloed experience where it's you and your direct report against, the other team member that they have to work with in another department or whatever the case may be. I've been on both sides of that, and I've seen other people experience that. Is that kind of the result of not having a clear relationship vision? Meaning, you talked about it in the sense of being overworked, but it's
Yeah.
also, I would imagine it's also about how people conduct themselves and what your expectations of them are, and how you don't let people, pull you into this kind of us against them kind of environment.
Yeah, and this goes to a lot of various aspects of relationship dynamics. So yes, when we talk about each one of these can be applied to multiple relationship scenarios. And when you talked about a clear vision, I think it also overlaps with having well thought out principles that we live by. So, for instance, a well thought out principle is I do not enter into alliances with members of my team against other members of my team. I try my best. I'm gonna get all technical here. I try my best to make sure no one is on the outside position of relationship triangles. We've talked about relationship triangles. I try to make sure that no one is on the outside position. And these are principles that I live by. And this, of course, informs the vision that I have for relationships, etc.
All right, so here is the $64 million question.
Mhm.
How does Unbox to Lead help leaders develop these characteristics? If I become a member, I don't want to make this a shameless plug, but we've talked about this in the past, that what we're giving are very small doses, small bites, if you will, the appetizer, but there is a main course. So I want to give people the opportunity to hear that there is more to this, and I want you to talk a little bit about how does Unbox to Lead help leaders develop these characteristics. Uh, if you never mind, just go ahead and answer that. I had another
Yeah.
question, but talk about that.
So I'm not going to get too deep into it, but let me just share this. One of the things that we really try to do, using the support groups, the one-to-one coaching, as well as the Unbox to Learn, is to try to help, especially with the one-to-one coaching and then the support groups, but the one-to-one coaching especially.
Mhm.
We try to develop baselines so that a leader can actually see progress, help the leader to identify where they are at various areas of their leadership. And don't get me wrong, I have never met a leader yet, especially when you become an executive director or a C suite officer. I've never met one yet that is just lacking in all five of these areas. Like, all five of these areas are areas of growth, even though we just kind of joked about that a moment ago. That's never been my experience. So, what they'll notice is that they're really strong in certain areas, they're decent in other areas, and then they're struggling in some areas. And so we can kind of help leaders to figure that out, to draw a
Mhm.
baseline, and then to develop strategies. One of the great ways is within the support groups, because you
Mhm.
have other leaders, again, who are strong in a particular area, and then they can share, this is how I manage this part of my leadership. So someone who says they have a difficulty being a calm, less anxious presence, then you have a leader who's strong at this, who says, this is how I am intentional. And we've seen this, by having different leaders have come on our show
Yeah.
who have talked about kind of like the process that they use to make others feel included, the process that they use to be calmer and to kind of bring the temperature down, or to raise the temperature without getting everybody overwhelmed. I was really appreciative of Jules Kelty, where she said sometimes you've got to turn the temperature up, but she talked about it in a way that it doesn't overwhelm the team members and end up impacting in a negative way the organization. So that's kind of how we do it. Helping folk, we have tools and assessments to help people to identify where they are, and then to be able to have a strong support through coaching, through other leaders in the support group, to actually grow in these various areas. So that's what I've seen. That's how we do it at Unbox to Learn. To lead.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's good. So as we get ready to close here,
Yeah.
what are some practical exercises that you'd give leaders to begin developing these characteristics in their relationships?
Yeah. There are four things I think are great starters. Four things, and I'm going to share them real quick. Number one, Go through the list and grade yourself on each one of them. I know that you're not using an unboxed assessment, but just we laid out those five to you. So go through and kind of just grade yourself on, how would you grade yourself when we talk about the leader takes a stand based on well thought out principles? What would you give yourself on that? This will help you to be realistic about your areas of strength as well as your areas of growth. And then I would encourage you to go through and look at that. And also kind of on that same vein, go through the list and have a friend or colleague grade you on each one.
I was going to ask about that, a kind of a 360 experience there. I was going to ask about it. Yeah, okay.
And that's tremendous. And to hear others to kind of say, this has been my experience. This is what I've observed. It can be humbling. Boy, I've been humbled and I've been humiliated. But
I've been balled up in the bathroom. I've had this happen to me, and I've been like, man, I did not see myself like that. That's not how I saw it. Boy, was that gut punching.
Exactly. So that's a good thing. Number two is to work on improving family relationships. I'm not going to go too deep into that. We dealt with that a lot last time, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But really working on improving family relationships, you will see that it will help you to improve every other type of relationship. Watch our previous broadcasts. It'll give you a lot of insight about that, especially the one we just did about family research. It'll make a whole lot of sense. Number three, work on developing or refining your list of guiding principles, which some people call core value. Grade yourself. Where are you doing a good job at living out these principles? Again, I'm not just trying to boost hers up, but we had a great conversation with Jules Kelty where she talked about her core values, and then she talked about where she struggles in living out some of them. Like she has it down on paper. It's awesome. Here's where I struggle in living out some of them. Here's where I'm doing a really good job at others. That helps when you write out your guiding principles, your core values for your own personal life, not the organization. We're talking about you. And then kind of go through and, realistically grade yourself and kind of determine where you need to improve, where you're doing good, etc. And then lastly, for time's sake, move toward the difficult people, the difficult relationships, the difficult situations. In other words, don't try to avoid it. I talked about that being my experience in Charlotte, trying to avoid it, trying to get around it. No, move towards it. Move towards it intentionally and thoughtfully, where you try to determine what is going on inside of me, where you're literally keeping record of some of the biometric indicators. Do I notice that my heart rate is increasing? Am I breathing more? Am I having a difficult time maintaining trains of thought? When I'm in this situation, how does my body feel? How do I react? How do I respond? And all that stuff. Move toward difficult people. How am I feeling when I'm around this person? Who is it that I notice myself avoiding? Those type of things, as well as the difficult relationships. And again, it may be relationships with HR or relationships. I think about the show The Office, and Michael Scott could not stand Toby from HR. So, if I was talking to Michael Scott, would that be awesome to help Michael Scott. But anyway, if I was talking, I'm going to say, hey, man, how can you move toward having a better relationship with Toby, staying in contact with Toby? Edwin Friedman says this, it is the capacity to get in touch with that process, to know it and to experience it, to be affected by it over and over again, and then to not be reactive to it. That, according to Bowen Family Systems theory, is the source of emotional maturity. Getting in touch with those pushbacks, those difficulties, and staying with it, and learning through trial and error how not to be as affected by it. And doing that over and over again is what really helps us to reach a level of emotional maturity as leaders.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. So that brings us to the end of our show today. Thank you once again, Dr. Davis, for your insight and your expertise. As always, I am filled, blessed, I don't know, whatever word you want to use, but I always walk away from our experience here on this broadcast feeling like I have hope for my leadership. The Unboxed broadcast is produced by Bobby Davis Jr., graphics and video design provided by Damon Mace, and marketing and promotion by John Sedano. Remember to visit our website at www.unboxedtolead.com. For Dr. Robert Davis, I'm RP Soriano, and we look forward to seeing you at the next broadcast as we help you unlock the power of your leadership. Be well.
UnBoxed provides a full-service leaders peer support community that helps high-level leaders become more authentic leaders who build healthy workplace cultures and reach their personal life goals. To learn more and discover how we can take your leadership and your life to the next level, please visit our website at unboxedtolead.com. That's unboxed, 2lead.com. Again, that's unboxed, 2lead.com.